All right, this 4 o'clock hour continues. Josh Neighbors, 365 Sports. He joins us here every Friday. Craig and I were on the road traveling with high school football for 3 months, and he started this segment with Paul. Not that he hadn't been a part of the show before, and he joins us on 365 Sports. So, Josh, let's go through the Big 12 and your thoughts. Let's start with the game in Ames, Iowa. Iowa State, a team that can be a tough out, but still some vulnerabilities, and UT trying to clinch a spot in the Big 12 championship game.
Good to be with you guys as always. So yes, obviously with this game, the big story is this. Texas is better than Iowa State. They've got a better team. They got better personnel. They are more complete. The last few weeks we've seen it with Texas, though, is that they have continued to shoot themselves in the foot. In previous seasons, they've done that and lost the games. This year, they're still winning. And the thing is, hey, if you let Iowa State hang around in that environment, they might make you pay. So K-State was getting dogged in that game against Texas. They had no business being close. Well, that game went to overtime, and it was a play away from going K-State's way. I mean, TCU got completely outclassed, but Texas had to salt that game away with a final drive last week. It had no business being close. You know, I think this Texas team, years back, you feel good about them, but still, like, they are still surviving. The one thing that's hard to square that with is the fact that nobody can run the ball on them. There's nobody that can do it, and I doubt Iowa State's offense can because they have not run the ball effectively all season. So I think the big thing, I heard a good breakdown from the folks at Cover 3 saying, hey, man, like, don't even run on first down. Like, you might be able to try if there's some good looks, but 2nd and 8, 3rd and 8, that's not where you win this game. Like, you need to create some advantages, and that's where the secondary is weak. And also, this is a environment at Ames where Iowa State's won this game. Matt Campbell has won this game. Now, not the same cast of characters, obviously, but the fact that they're a bowl team already, and the fact that this spread's only 7.5, I think it tells you about where this Iowa State team is, and also how Texas has not been able to close out games despite being the better team essentially in every game they've played this year.
Josh, does Rocco Becht have to have his signature game this year for them to win?
Yes, to keep this thing Italian, and he needs to have his Joe Pesci and Goodfellas this weekend. It's also Scorsese's birthday, so shout out Marty. Yes, he needs to have his Joe Pesci Goodfellas performance. Once again, like, as a guy who was not supposed to be the quarterback, and for him to be as good as he's been this year, and it seems like they're working on some targets, developing some guys, like, really impressive. But when I think about quarterback performances against Texas this year, when were they threatened? Donovan Smith, tremendous performance with Houston, huge threat. Dylan Gabriel, game of his life. They end up winning that game. So, and the other games have been threatening too, but like really the games that were close, because Texas hurt themselves a bit in the Houston game, but honestly, like, Houston just started scoring on them. I think that they were able to exploit that secondary. So you need to have, game of your life type stuff from a guy like a Rocco Becht. And I mean, he hasn't played that many games, but we've seen Texas enough to know, hey, you got to bring that 110% your best effort to have a chance to beat them.
Josh, despite the debacle in Orlando last week, Oklahoma State still controls their ability to get into the Big 12 championship game. Need to beat Houston. Houston had a big fall off after the win over Baylor. So both these teams sort of limping into this one down in H-Town. Your thoughts on just where both of them kind of find themselves now, and for particularly Oklahoma State, the ability to bounce back?
Houston has been banned from all of my gambling apps. I'm done. I'm just over it. And that's the problem for Dana. Like, I just don't know which group's going to show up. The K-State game, you kind of knew. Right after kind of just the Herculean effort, like, it was just a bad spot for them. But losing to Cincinnati, seriously, after that, and then now they're back home, and I'm really wondering about his future. Do they give him the pass, first year, new conference, whatever? And he talked this week about how many calls Golden's been getting. I don't know if that's a good idea, especially because if I'm him, I might leave and go somewhere else. So I don't know what that mindset is. But the big thing for Oklahoma State is, they don't have a ton of paths to victory. They need to be able to run the ball effectively against teams. Now, Houston has not shut a lot of teams down, but UCF had neither. Weather did help, obviously. But like, you kind of saw it last week. Oklahoma State has to pack it up and go home if things don't go their way, which is kind of concerning for them. So yeah, I think it's a very, very good test mentally for them. They do have the better football team overall. There's some players on that Houston team, especially on the offensive side, but they need to control the clock and basically squeeze the life out of the game and say, all right, Houston, you need to make sure you make the most of your opportunities in this game, because Houston's been so hit or miss. I feel like if you limit possessions, it's probably the best way to beat them. So I think it's what Cincinnati did a bit last week too. So that's kind of the diagnosis. Can Oklahoma State get back to what got them to this point in that winning streak?
Has your opinion changed about UCF after last week?
No, not at all. Because they've got playmakers. Good, you stop the run one game, but they haven't done it consistently. And the thing is, they're going to be better off. They're going to be better off when Plumlee leaves. Like the thing is, if they had a pure passer as their quarterback, they're probably in better shape, because the thing that this offense needs, they just need somebody to distribute the football to all of these guys. I mean, Townsend, Harvey, and Baker, these are legit players they have. So good for Gus at the complete dominant win. I'm happy for you, but I don't think my opinions really changed of them too much. I think they were due, not for a game like that, but just kind of we're at home, we're playing a good team, they're making mistakes, and our players, our athletes are capitalizing.
So with that in mind, UCF and those athletes heading to Lubbock, and Texas Tech suddenly finds itself in a very favorable position to make a bowl game, needing to win in their last two. Now, favorable, maybe that's too strong, because that last one is going to be a tough one at Texas. So this one's kind of a, hey, you should go ahead and win this and just, seal the deal here. But that's a tough team. UCF obviously has a little bit of confidence building. I just don't know about Josh, them going on the road to Lubbock. That's the part that kind of hangs up any upset potential for UCF here, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like Tech's chances at home. And it's funny, I mentioned this in my show, The Big 12 Watch, today, about how success is not linear. And so what made Mike Leach successful was the fact that week in and week out, his team, or, year in and year out, his teams were going to bowl games. That's really not been the case since Spike Dykes and Mike Leach. It's been a whole lot of up and down. And so I know everything was 8-5 last year. It was, a lot of momentum this year. But I was always wondering, I'm like, okay, can you all consistently win first and start building a better defense before we talk about you as a Big 12 title contender year in and year out? And so I think this game represents a really big opportunity for Joey McGuire's team to at least give themselves a chance to have a winning season and go to a bowl game. And you start stacking those on top of each other, I think in the new Big 12, good results will follow for Tech. The thing, too, for Tech they've done a really good job of is they passed the ball way too much earlier in the season. So they would go on these big runs, and then what would happen afterwards is they'd give the points back. The way they can run the football now is they can actually use a bit more of the clock. So, even if they aren't able to score, they're actually taking some more clock up, and all of a sudden, a 17-point lead doesn't evaporate in roughly 2 minutes, of game time. That's big for them. And Taj Brooks has been really good, and Cameron Valdez looks like he could be the next guy. So if they've got the stamina to keep running pace and to keep running the football effectively, let's see if UCF can do it back-to-back weeks in Lubbock on the road this time when the weather's not going to be like that it was last week.
Josh, my last question is, of the four incoming teams, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and Brigham, BYU, I thought that BYU was probably more set for the wear and tear, the transition, or the attrition of the first year in the Big 12, but it looks like they're running out of gas. And I know Slovis is hurt too. Oklahoma's playing them this week. Is that what you see from the Cougars?
Yeah, I can't think about a game this year where I was super impressed with the way they play. I was impressed with their wherewithal against Arkansas.
Yeah.
But, what does BYU do well? And you look at the numbers, and they don't do anything particularly well this season. And that was the big problem for them. And so when I think about these schools like Cincinnati and Houston and UCF and where they're located and their ability to build certain things, I'm wondering about what the identity of BYU is going to be. Can they be the team they were before, really good quarter? Because the thing was the quarterback play this year has been inconsistent, but is this going to be an offensive line driven team? Run the football? Are they going to create turnovers? What is BYU going to do well and carry identity wise? Or are they going to try to adapt what their roster is, and I'm not sure, I think Stocky's a good coach, but Mike Gundy has been the one who, even with his stumbles, has done a great job of adapting his rosters in recent years to what they do really well. And so even though I think this Oklahoma State team gets outclassed a bunch, like they can still be in games if they're not making mistakes and beat teams like Oklahoma and beat teams like K-State because they run the football effectively. And also they can create some turnovers, and if they take care of the football, they're in good shape. Like, can BYU build towards that? Because, I don't feel like they're the better team in any game they play. I mean, they beat Tech this year, but they had a third-string quarterback, and they turned the ball over 5 times, and they beat them by 13 points. So, like, what are we supposed to take from that? And they were 5-2 at one point, right? They're now 5-5 and most likely staring down 5-6, and they might not make a bowl game. So, yeah, they're kind of the weak link out of the new 4. And the new 4 haven't been great either. I mean, I still think, like, they beat Cincinnati earlier in the year, but that was not a convincing performance at all.
Josh, I can't let you go without your thoughts on the WWE belt that's coming to the Big 12 MVP.
So people have been like up and down, like, hey, well, what are they doing here with this? College football is pro wrestling. I covered pro wrestling when I was at XM as an intern, and a little bit of a fan of it. Like, what is happening with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan? That is heel stuff. Mike Gundy is basically a WWE character, right? I mean, his "I'm a man, I'm 40" is basically Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass." Like, that is what college football really is. It's narrative driven. So I think this partnership, I'm not saying it takes them to the moon or anything, but like, it does make sense. Also, Endeavor did consult with the Big 12. Endeavor is the parent company of TKO, the holding firm, whatever you want to call it, for WWE and UFC. Hey, man, like, the idea of a Texas player, Quinn Ewers, holding up a championship belt as they win the Big 12 sounds terrible, but it also sounds like something straight out of Vince McMahon's head. And I think a little bit of that is good. I think the Big 12, once again, needs to find every single little thing they can to kind of lead into to get an advantage marketing-wise and all those places. So I think this makes sense as a potential marketing idea, and I like it. It could spice up the Big 12 championship game some, and I think the relationship too. I mean, college sports and pro wrestling, they are so much closer than I think people believe.
I just don't know how they're going to play a football game in a cage. I don't know how. I'm not sure
That's
how
tough.
That's going to be. How do you punt? How do you punt?
Smokey, my idea was this: 14 coach. So they use at WrestleMania every year. They do a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. I want the 14 coach ladder match before the championship game, the Intercontinental belt. I'm worried about some of the older coaches, but like, if they had that, my money's probably on Gundy. Like, if you had, hey, which coach could climb a ladder and unhook the belt? I'm trying to think of who my number one would be, but like, Gundy, even though he's getting older, I just feel like it's his to lose. It's hard to go against him.
Aranda has the Stone Cold look, right, with the bald head. So there's a little bit of that.
I wouldn't bet against Kalani Sitake. He's
he's kind of muscular
guy,
yeah.
dude. Yeah, I mean,
but he's also kind of a big dude, so getting up a ladder might be a little difficult. You got to take that into consideration. So
who has the most enemies too, right? Because you could go a situation where, hey, who's tipping the ladder over, right? Gundy probably has a lot of folks who want to tip the ladder over on him, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it's probably it would be maybe Venables this year too. He looks like he's in like pretty good shape.
I like the idea of Venables on one side and Sark on the other, and they're climbing up to both grab it, and then everybody else runs over and tips them over.
Tips the ladder. It'd be a classic spot. Unbelievable. Yes. There you go.
Yeah, you just made this WWE thing. Craig is a huge fan of wrestling for many, many years. You and him need to stay out of the same room, huh?
Or be in the same room to talk about it. I don't know if we want to avoid it if we're both fans, but yeah.
Hey, look, I think this week's show, though, with the WWE thing and also like the really weird rules clarification that once again, folks, like this is a marketing guy they hired to be the Big 12 commissioner. Yeah. He is not a college football fan. He does not pretend to be. All right. So like, this is pure marketing. Was it a great week? No, but like, I think we should kind of wait to cast stones, at least in the WWE thing, before we see how it goes.
By the way, your hair, which is like phenomenal, is what Paul's used to look like.
Thanks.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
and then he watched mid 2000s, late 2000s Florida State football.
Yeah. Paul used to have a tight look like that, that black Italian look,
Yeah. I did.
Am I right?
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah.
My mother, the Moretti family. It's her, and she gave me the great hair. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. What happens with Italians though, Josh, is it's there and then it's not.
Yeah, it's done.
Like there's
mine's staying, Paul. Mine's staying.
I'm glad. I'm glad for you.
Are you sitting in front of your back fence or something?
We gave it that backdrop.
Oh,
this
that
is
used
a
to be right
backdrop
there.
that Brian Etheridge sent
Yeah,
me.
it used to be right here.
To
No,
use.
have a great weekend. Great stuff, Josh. Appreciate your time. Appreciate that.
I'll try not to go 0-6 in my Twitter picks this week, so I stand on business. We'll see
There
you
you
get
go.
back to basics. See you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Josh Neighbors of 365 Sports.
Yeah, I think the WWE thing